It's winter, that time of year when you want nothing more than to curl up with a hot drink and a good book. Or maybe you're looking for gifts to give this Christmas or Hanukkah. Either way, we're here to spotlight a few books that are sure to be hits this winter season and offer a glimpse at the history embedded in their pages and what went into bringing the ideas to life. First up, Ellen Keith's HarperCollins Publishers UBC Prize for Best New Fiction winning novel, The Dutch Wife.
I've always had a really strong interest in history. When I was 10, my family went on a big camping trip across Europe, and I was really moved by all of the remnants of the war that I saw there. We were standing in old bunkers. We actually found parts of the airplane that my great uncle was shot down in France. And so that really instilled in me this lasting interest in the war, and I really wanted to see how I could combine my interest in fiction and history into one thing.
Keith's novel is set during World War II, and it weaves together the stories of individuals across Europe. The central character is a Dutch woman who is sent to a concentration camp. Keith set out to research the real-life camps to burst through our cultural understanding of them and get closer to the truth of their existence.
We have an idea of the camps that is often constructed out of what we see in Hollywood movies. And I think there are some sides of the camps that we don't focus on as much that seem very at odds with what we know generally. For example, there were libraries in some of these camps that the prisoners were allowed to go to, and they created a sort of reward system for what they called good behavior. And it was a way of increasing the economic productivity of their labor force in the camp. And so they would say, if you're behaving well enough, you might be allowed to buy cigarettes, or you might be allowed to take a book out of the library, or even go watch a film at the prisoners' cinema. These are things I never would have thought existed in a camp.
It was when she was looking into the various reward systems the Nazis set up for prisoners that Keith stumbled into the existence of camp brothels.
It was all part of this reward system, and it was introduced in 1943. Himmler had felt a need to really boost the productivity of the camps, and he thought one thing that these male prisoners is missing is female contact. So they started gradually opening up brothels in a number of the camps. Because I was so shocked to find out that these brothels existed, and I really felt that I knew quite a bit about the war and the camps, I realized during the research that it was something that nobody has been very comfortable talking about until the last 5 or 10 years. And I think part of that is because you have to keep in mind that by creating this reward system for prisoners, the prisoners were also contributing to the suffering of these female prostitutes. And that's something that is very difficult to wrap your head around. That, again, it comes back to this idea of thinking very black and white, as in we were on the right side of the war, they were on the wrong side of the war. But it was far more complicated than that. And I think a lot of it came down to this need for human comfort and contact. But after the war, when you look back at that, I think the women were not comfortable coming forward with the fact that they were prostitutes in these brothels. And I don't think any of the prisoners who might have visited them would have wanted to acknowledge that, because that, in a way, is something that they were probably also very ashamed of. And it's something that I think a lot of these women took to their graves.
These brothels became central to the story Keith tells in The Dutch Wife and puts the novel in league with classic tales of feminism and female agency, such as The Handmaid's Tale. While the novel isn't exactly a fun read, it is absorbing and illuminates some history very few of us are taught in schools.
This was a novel about choices and the types of struggles people go through on a daily basis and what they would do when forced into really difficult circumstances. But it was also really about looking at different perspectives of the war and some of the stories that are a little overshadowed by the more common narrative that we hear.
If you're looking for a bit more of an irreverent read, you might be looking for something more like Andrew Schaefer's presidential fan fiction novel, Hope Never Dies, an Obama-Biden mystery. Schaefer's novel tells the fictional story of America's 44th president and his VP solving crimes in their post-White House lives.
I'd always wanted to write a mystery, But the initial idea for this particular book started with seeing Joe Biden in his aviator shades, and he looked like a classic, stereotypical action hero. He was like Tom Cruise in Top Gun or something. Then he opened his mouth, sticks his foot in it, and you go, oh, he's not James Bond or something. He's like Leslie Nielsen. And so it wasn't until the memes started going around last year, the Obama-Biden bromance memes, that I said, wait a minute, people want to see them together. It's not just about Joe Biden. They want to see them together, and at that point it was just a very short jump over to, oh, well, Obama is Sherlock, and Joe Biden is Watson, and he's the narrator, and I just took off from there. I sent it to my agent, who just sent me back an email that said, OMG. And she said, are you serious? And I go, of course I'm serious.
Schaefer says part of what drew him to write about the Obama-Biden bromance was that he, along with the rest of the country, feels like he watched the friendship bloom.
People saw that from the beginning they weren't the best of friends. There were lots of reports of Barack Obama being upset with Joe Biden on the campaign. He did a few things where he stuck his foot in his mouth, and he was upset with him, and then Joe Biden felt like he couldn't talk, say what he wanted to say. And so you knew right off the bat, you're like, oh, another vice president and president who aren't going to get along. But then over the course of 8 years, they started to have lunch on a weekly basis together, and you started to see that they were actually becoming friends. And you don't really see that sort of thing in real time, especially someone who starts off on the wrong foot with each other like they did. So I think people can see how genuine that is, and that it's not a calculated thing. That's what people wanted to see, was what goes on behind the scenes in real life. What are they like together? And nobody really knows what their personal conversations are like. But that's what I said. I want to just sort of fictionalize that. And in fact, I don't believe that they're anything like what they are in the book, but it's a little bit of wish fulfillment.
The Joe Biden presented in the book is very much in line with the satirized version of the man, the meme people love of the carefree politician who is too cool for school. Schaefer says while that is partially a myth at odds with the serious thinker who spent 36 years in the U.S. Senate, it was what he felt most comfortable writing.
I did a lot of research reading all of their biographies and memoirs and stuff that's been written about them. But at a certain point, I just wanted to sort of fictionalize things, because I was like, I can put in the book that Joe Biden is a lot more serious and private than he seems on camera and stuff. But if I put that Biden in the book, people aren't going to believe it, because they already have an image of Joe Biden, and it's that he can be a little bumbling sometimes, especially tripping over his words and whatnot. So I had to sort of toe the line between the stuff that I learned researching them and then what people thought they knew about them.
So no, Schaefer's book is not going to shed any new light on the lives of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, but it is a fun read, and one Schaefer hopes can be enjoyed by the whole country, and not just part of it.
I actually tried to make politics recede into the background of the book as much as possible, simply because I want it to be a very personal story and sort of humanize these characters. But at the same time, you can't ignore that we have a very partisan politics right now in this country, and it's often very bitter and divided. So I know there's one side of the aisle really is probably not going to pick the book up, but I have had several people who did that were sort of more conservative leaning and say, you know what, I still don't like them as people, but as a mystery, I really got into this.
If either of these novels sound like the kind of story you'd like to explore on a cold day, or sounds like the perfect gift for someone in your life, both The Dutch Wife and Hope Never Dies are available now. For links and more information on all of our guests, visit our site at viewpointsonline.net. Our show was written and produced by Evan Rook. Studio production by Jason Dickey. Reed Pence is our executive producer. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
Been looking for the perfect holiday gift for that coffee or latte lover in your life? Make it a special one with the Keurig K Latte single-serve coffee and latte maker available exclusively at Walmart for only $99. The new Keurig K Latte single-serve coffee and latte maker allows coffee lovers to enjoy regular single-serve coffee or lattes in the comfort of their own home. Use any K-Cup pod to brew coffee or make delicious lattes. While most specialty coffee makers can be complicated, time-consuming, and messy, the Keurig K Latte Coffee House Brewer is simple to use, allowing consumers to prepare coffee or lattes in minutes. Swing by your local Walmart or find the K Latte Coffee House Brewer at walmart.com for the everyday low price of $99 and give the gift of a more delicious holiday.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook to learn about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on iTunes. Plus, you'll always find podcasts of our segments and information about our guests at viewpointsonline.net. Join us again next week for your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.